time together on Sunday. It's a good time. I think while we're waiting for people to join us, I'd like to meditate to a Zazen song from the Cayman Blue album. This is called Hurricane Bayou. And we'll just meditate, center yourself in your heart. If you feel so inclined, you can focus for a while on your heart, and then your throat, and maybe your third eye or your crown. But I think whatever fits right, but let's just shake off the energy of the week and move ahead with enlightenment. Why not? Here we go. Okay. Let's see if I'm assuming I'm done here. So welcome again, and nice to have all of you here. These are interesting times. These are exciting times. These are the most exciting times for us. This is why we incarnated. I really believe that. We're at the end of an old age. The age of control, domination, manipulation, and fear. That operating system is dying a very slow and painful death. People are still trying to run the world with that old operating system, and it's not going to work so well, especially going into the future. The new operating system is the opposite. It's one of compassion, empathy, selflessness, consideration, and love. It seems so strange to talk about it, especially if you were raised in that old operating system of control, domination, manipulation, and fear. To imagine a world that doesn't operate on that system. But in order for this new world to come about, the old one has to crash and burn. And that's what's happening. I know it's upsetting. I know it bothers you. And for some of you, it's very frightening. I understand. But I want to assure you that you are eternal. That while your physical body and your ego will go away, you will not. You will always be. In a sense, we'll always be together because we've never been apart. But that's another discussion. So let me look here. You cannot give in to fear or anxiety. You're much too powerful for that. When you focus upon fear or when you create anxiety about the future, you're empowering that energy. So it's very important to be mindful of where you're placing your thoughts and your emotions. I've talked a lot over the last few months about what you touch touches you. And this really goes especially true when it comes to our thoughts and our emotions. But it's difficult to get a handle on that sometimes because you're just caught up in the world. So, okay, let's talk about that. Okay, we'll start there. 30, 40 years ago, long time ago, when I first started studying with my teacher, we got into Carlos Castaneda for a while. And I got some good stuff from it. I did. But one of the concepts that was in the Toltec approach to enlightenment was the idea of the Nahual and the Tonal. And I find that the Nahual and the Tonal fits really, really good in with the Tao and with Buddhism. The Nahual is the undefined. It is called the unknowable. And the minute that you give it a description or that you recognize it in any sort of way, it becomes what you recognize it to be and not what it was. This is Brahma. And then there's the creation of Vishnu. And Vishnu is not Brahma anymore. It's the product of Brahma. However, it is made up of Brahma energy. Same thing is true in the Nahwal. You have the Nahwal, and then you have each one of us as individuals are described as islands in the Nahwal. The Nahwal has no bounds, and neither does the tonal, but the tonal is bound by our description of it, by our ability to apprehend what's an experience in the tonal. So I'm going to move away from the words Nahwal and tonal, and instead I'm going to be talking about creative energy and your ego. I've often wondered about what the ego was. And recently I've kind of got an idea, at least my idea of what it is. When you came into this world, into this body, you experienced two new things. One was the body itself. It was new. Very cool. The other thing was an ego. In Carlos Castaneda, they say when you were born, your awareness is all over the place, and your awareness is pressed in from everything and everyone around you. It presses you down until you become what they call a member. How you're assembling the infinite, and it comes down to a point called the assemblage point, in which you're putting together your realities. So the assemblage point then becomes very important for us moving ahead in this life, because everything in our life moves forth through the assemblage point. And the assemblage point is how we take that undefined energy and give it form, give it definition, give it qualities. We're constantly taking the infinite and making it into some sort of a reality for ourselves. But whatever reality we create is not anywhere near what its original form was. The original form was so immense, so many different dimensions, so many different layers of energies and everything that we couldn't put them together. But when we were able to just take a few of them and put it together in some sort of a reality, then we have our ego moving. So again, as I talked about last week, when I was born, my assemblage point was all over the place. It was mainly just witnessing. And I watched my ego create things. It created an idea about my mother and my father and my two brothers. It created an idea, an acceptance, or a definition of our little house or our little apartment complex that my dad owned at the time. It included the church across the street. It included all of my friends. And as I grew older and I started becoming aware of more and more, as the energies from around me kept coming in, my idea about life expanded. My world moved away from my front room into everywhere I ever went, or even read about in some cases. I cannot expect to experience everything in the tonal or in this world. I don't have the time or the mental capacity to do so. I do not have the mind or the mental capacity to suddenly go to China and speak Mandarin, or to go to any foreign country and learn their language, learn their culture, learn their dress, learn their religions, learn their family structures, learn their language. I'm having a difficult time with just the one I have. And I know that I have very limited people in my life. I did a recapitulation, which I wrote down everyone that I'd ever met in my life. It's a difficult thing, but it takes a while. I was surprised at how few it was. I figured it would be thousands, but really the people I could remember that had any kind of influence on me, it really was only about 300 or 400, maybe at the most. I had a lot of acquaintances, but I'm talking about people that were meaningful that I interacted with. So we're here just experiencing the infinite being expressed in the finite infinitely, and each one of us is trying to make sense of it. And what we're bringing to the table is what we bought into when we became a member of this reality, when our assemblage point came together and suddenly we were a human being, we had a name, we had a gender, we had a family, or maybe not a family, maybe an orphanage or something, but we had something. And from that point on, we started building on that foundation. And we build on it our entire life until at the end of our life, we die. And the physical body goes away. And the ego also goes away, because the ego is defined by its experience in the body and everyone around us. And this is troubling and frightening to some of you, because you identify so completely with your ego that you think that's who you are. And really, it's just who you're expressing yourself as who you are. It's not who you really are. Your enlightenment. You're more than this. I've noticed in my, as I was contemplating my original face and moving back here, focusing on how the higher energies come into the body and what goes on. And I noticed this week that the energies would come in, and I would like to say come in from the top. It doesn't, because this is not linear that way. It's kind of fourth dimensional, really hard to explain, but naturally. But I noticed as the emanations from that original cause came to me, it would be like pressure would build up, and then I would find myself having a thought, a memory of something that happened in high school, or something that I had left unfinished. I needed to go out and do that, change oil in my car or something like that, or political movements or anything. It was just it would grab that energy, and it would take, oh, this energy feels like this, so that matches this memory, so I'll just bring that memory up. So my entire meditation was full of this, my ego grabbing energy and trying to create a thought. That's what it does. That's its job. It does it 24/7. It's looking for input, and any input that comes in, it categorizes it, it puts it into a reality, and it makes it fit. But you are not your ego. This is a temporary expression that you're going through. And you suffer and you're afraid and depressed because you're identifying with the transitory nature of your spiritual being, which is eternal. And in that identifying with the finite, with that stuff that just doesn't last, you become disoriented and you lose yourself. You lose yourself in this dream of limitation. The ego's job is to take the unlimited and pull it into a limited thought. I've talked many times about the time when Don Juan took Carlos out into the desert, and they were watching, they came upon this open, it was a night, moonless night, and they came upon an open space in the desert, and across the space was an animal that was dying. And he said he looked at it, and the hairs on his neck picked up, And the animal was letting out moans, but he says, about the size of a calf. Looked like a huge bird of some kind, but nothing like he'd ever seen here. And he turned to Don Juan and he says, what's that? He whispered. And Don Juan says, shh. And as he said, what's that? The animal let out a scream that echoed down the canyon and back. And he watched it for a while, and they watched it. And Carlos shook himself, picked up a stick, went over, poked it, held it up in the air and said, look, Don Juan, it's just a tumbleweed. He took something that was obviously another experience. A tumbleweed doesn't let out a scream that echoes up and down the canyon. But he turned it into a tumbleweed. Now, this is what we all do. This is what the ego does all of the time. It's taking the unmentionable, it's taking the unknowable, it's taking the very divine nature of God, and it's pulling it through all of your filters, all of your experiences, and all the things you've been taught about who you are and what you are. And it says, okay, this will fit right in here. And if it doesn't fit in any of those places, we'll find a little file cabinet over here which says mysterious stuff. We'll just put it in there. We don't have to think about it. We all have our own realities. And our realities are put together by our ego, our assemblage point. And if you want to change your life, you have to move the assemblage point, how you're assembling things together. If you don't move it, nothing changes. But your assemblage point is always being moved. How you're assembling your world together is always being moved. You see something on television, a heroic act of some kind, you change a little bit. You're always picking up energy and making it into a form, making it into something that you can relate to. But everything here is transitory. I come from when I was growing up in a very large family. My dad had lots of uncles, lots of brothers and sisters, and my grandmother lived until she was 105. So longevity in my family, both sides, lots of relatives, lots of cousins. They're all gone now, with the exception of my brother and about 3 cousins. They're all gone. They added to my life. They're part of my reality. They're part of my ego structure that helps me put my life together. And all of this will go away when I die, but who I am, what I am, the original me, the part of me that really comes through sometimes when you recognize it when it does, that part lives on. And it's the same with you. You're more than your body. We're more than what your mind is. Your mind is just trying to gather things together, make it seem logical. My teacher was always correcting me. He yelled at me a lot because of my ego. I understand. I have a huge ego, apparently. I mean, you tell me anything and I'll put it into some sort of a tumbleweed. I was raised in a very evangelical church. I went from that into spirituality. I then went into that into metaphysics. And the pathway is taking me through. I went through, I was in science of mind, or sometimes called religious science, which was based upon all religions, studied all the religions. It was very Vedanta. Very eclectic. So when something happens, I'm always having something I can reach out and say, oh, I'll put it into this category. I'll define it this way. People will understand it if I say this way. And it's not always the case. But each one of you is part of me. We're not separate. My ego makes us separate because it doesn't want to see that. But really, we're made of the same stuff. We all come from the Nahwal. We all come from the divine, the undefinable. And we're here for a temporary time. So as the days go in to months, in the next few months, when we're going through a particularly interesting time on this earth, where governments and people are questioning and rebelling and changing and trying to aggressively hold on to their realities, let it be. We're studying the Tao for a reason. Let it flow. You're eternal. And you really need to touch that part of yourself. And the way to touch that part of yourself is through meditation and contemplation and prayer, and through selfless service. I recommend that every day this next week, you do something for somebody else selflessly. My neighbor upstairs came down. She's a young lady. She's had a rough life, but she's nice. And she came down the other day and she says, I know you're a senior citizen. I'm going to the store. Can I get something for you so you don't have to go out? How nice. How touching. What would this world be if we all were like that? I think it would be a pretty decent place. As the months come up, and as I've told you over and over again, this is going to be kind of an interesting ride up until the winter solstice. I think it'll clear up about then. But between now and then, take a breath, take a walk, go out and see if you can feel the earth, feel the energy and the life in the earth that is so alive that it just pushes up through the soil and causes plants and trees and shrubs to grow all around you. And all the little animals and insects and reptiles that infect and not infect, but well, maybe infect, but live there. It's an amazing thing, this fourth dimensional thing. There's so many different dimensions. Don't get caught up in your description of the world. Your ego is limited, but you are not. You are unlimited. This is a temporary experience. You're having an incarnation. You had thousands of them before, and you will have thousands more to go. We have eternity of experiencing eternity. And if we're experiencing eternity for all of eternity, then I think we have a pretty good job description going on here. We just go through lifetime after lifetime. I could go on and on about how we put our assemblies together, how points are put together, but you can figure this stuff out. Contemplate, think about it. Consider yourself. Consider your divinity. Consider that the divine is in everything. There is nothing that is not part of the divine nature. Nothingness is everything, and everything is made of nothingness. It's a transitory dream going on in which we are active participants. We are working in this dream to grow in our awareness, to grow in our consciousness, to not just grow in our consciousness so we can drive a better car or, have nicer clothes or a prettier mate or whatever, but to awaken to the divine. Oh my God, I mean, to awaken. Why should we even have to encourage people to, well, why don't you consider this? It's so amazing. And it's inside of you. You can do it. You have to just watch your ego in your meditation. As you're watching the energy come up and you feel these thoughts come, recognize that your ego is trying to create something out of that energy that it doesn't need to. So you might even just say, transcend. I'm going to transcend it. Move above it. Transcend. Keep moving above it. Don't get caught at the level that your ego will put it together in some sort of a form or thought or emotion. Transcend it. Move above it. Just keep moving above it. Like this. Yeah, good. Some of you did. Very good. Let's meditate for a little bit. I'm kind of caught on this Cayman Blue album. I really love this album this week. So we'll hit a piece of music called Cayman Blue. Take a breath. During this time, it's very important for us to take refuge. We need to take refuge in the Sangha. Sangha is taking refuge or associating with people on the path. We need to support each other. We need to maybe even text or call somebody and tell them that, just ask them how they're doing. People are going to be, once again, not being able to go out and distract themselves. So the world is having to go through another phase of having death be its advisor. They just can't get away from it. Neither can you. So let death be your advisor. Clean up anything that's out there. If you have something against somebody, you need to clean it up. You need to forgive people. And if you've done something, you need to ask people to forgive you. We're all in this together. There's just one of us, you know. There's just one. Expressing as the many. But it's just one. So we need to take refuge in the Sangha. We need to take refuge in the Dharma, which is our spiritual teachings. Whatever, if you're a Christian and you're not into Buddhism like I am or whatever, then study the Bible. It doesn't matter. All paths lead to the divine if they're followed perfectly. All of them. So take refuge in your teaching. And finally, take refuge in the Buddha. The Buddha nature is your spiritual nature. It's your Christ nature if you're a Christian. It is that spiritual part of you that is connected to God, the infinite, the unknowable, expressing as you and everyone. So look at the divine. If you look at the mundane, if you look at the world, and you're looking at a world ruled by a bunch of out-of-control egos, people so hard with their reality that they force you to try to accept their reality. Well, in the meantime, they're not willing to look at yours at all. How interesting. Phoenix gave me a picture about 20 years ago. I kept it framed. And the picture was all of these lemmings going off of the cliff, all these sheep going off of the cliff. Usually thousands of them just going off of a cliff. And there's one sheep in the middle going the other way saying, excuse me, excuse me. That's us. Just because they're running off the cliff doesn't mean we have to. Take refuge. Take refuge in the Sangha. Take refuge in the Dharma. Take refuge in the Buddha. Now is the time to immerse yourself in your spiritual nature. Now is the time to awaken to enlightenment. If I can awaken, you can darn sure awaken. That's for sure. So don't beat yourself up. Forgive yourself. Don't be angry with others. They don't know what they're doing. They're just caught up in the Maya. In America Day, we have two different worlds. We have the world of, let's say, the Republicans and the world of the Democrats. Not kind of an overly broad thing. And they're all in different worlds. If you were in the world of the Republicans and everybody around you was a Republican, then you would believe what they say. If you're a Democrat, you believe what they say. What if both of them are wrong? Maybe it's a combination of both of them. Where's the common ground? Does anybody even bother taking the time to look at somebody else's point of view and see why they're thinking that? They're not our enemies. They're just people like us who got caught on another track. Open your heart. Enlightenment is not found in duality. It's found in oneness. Be neither attracted nor repulsed. Ignorance creates suffering, so dispel the ignorance. Become aware of your spiritual nature, the eternal part of you, but mostly become aware of your connection to the all, to the everything, to the nothing, to God, the unknowable expressing itself. Good. Have a good week. See you next week. Namaste.